I saw that she is the only female, like, nurse serial killer in the history of Canada.
Okay.
The only one that's been caught.
Okay.
And her being caught actually has led to an investigation so that they can more easily catch these things in the future, because they're saying if it weren't for her confessing and confessing and confessing over and over again, that she would have never been caught.
Jeez.
She would have never been caught if she did not confess like a million times over. Which is even crazier for a serial killer to confess that many times.
Yeah.
So her name is Elizabeth Wettlaufer. Wettlaufer?
Okay.
Wettlaufer? Anyway. I don't remember how to say this name. I did know. But anyway, she was born Elizabeth Parker. And she was born June 10th, 1967. And her backstory is, I think, pretty important to, like, seeing why she became the way she was.
Okay.
So, and there's some, like, pretty crazy stuff in here. But not crazy enough that you think someone would become a serial killer. It's, like, awful, but not so crazy that you're like, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So she was born to Baptist parents. Okay. Oh, she was born in Woodstock, Ontario. To Baptist parents.
That's definitely a background of a serial killer.
And she's gay.
Oh, well, that's not. But
No.
That's not common.
So her parents, of course, did not approve whatsoever.
I don't think you have to have bad parents to be a serial killer. It just has to be the perfect mix of a certain amount of sociopathy and disconnection.
Yeah. So her parents didn't approve whatsoever. They say she was like a really shy, awkward kid that got bullied a lot. And she tried to kind of conform to what she thought people wanted, but even that didn't really work.
Sure.
And things got...
That doesn't work.
Yeah. Things got a little bit better for her in high school, but not much. And then she went to college, which was... Okay, so she went to London Baptist Bible College to get a bachelor's in religious education counseling. So she really wanted to, like, her whole thing was, like, she really wanted to help people because she grew up, like, and struggled, I guess. She wanted to be there for other people, but in some kind of religious way, apparently. Get this. So she goes off to college, and her dad follows her and enrolls in the same college and even some of the same classes on her so that he could keep an eye on her.
What do you mean? That sounds like complete trauma.
It is trauma, but it's like, it's horrible, and it's like, oh yeah, like this is important to her story, but at the same time, it's not like horrific, like physical and emotional abuse, like to the point where
it is.
It is, yes, it is horrible abuse.
I think that's worse than getting hit.
Okay, I'm talking about serial killers, okay? I'm talking about, like, really crazy, awful stuff. This is more like, Jeffrey Dahmer, how, like, his mom, like, he saw his mom try to, off herself once, and they had their weird...
that's as bad?
It is.
I think
I'm comparing them. I'm saying they're similar.
Oh, I thought you were trying to say that, like, what her dad is doing is not as bad as, like, some of this stuff. Dude, not being able to give an adult freedom, in my opinion, might be worse.
It's horrible. She's like a prisoner.
They'll never be able to separate.
Yeah. Yep, that's exactly what it was. And she spent her entire life trying to live up to her parents' expectations to the point that it literally drove her mad. Like, she had this weight of stress on her at all times that I can't be gay. I have to be perfect for my family. I have to be. And it's honestly horrible. So he follows her to school. regardless, she tries to enjoy it and make the most out of it. She graduates with a bachelor's, but while she's in college, she gets a girlfriend.
Okay.
And then he puts her in conversion therapy.
Oy.
Yep. So she goes to conversion therapy. She had told... apparently, she would not talk about it to anybody, what happened there. She said it was too traumatic. She didn't want to talk about it.
Probably shocked her. That's normal conversion therapy. Is show them images of the same sex while shocking them.
It's horrible. I've heard lots of things that happen in conversion therapy, and it's just gross. Like, I think it's pretty obvious it doesn't work. And it's just torture.
Yeah.
It's just torture and abuse. That's all it is.
It is. Like Milo Yiannopoulos, he does his own torture therapy stuff that he talked about where, like, I think he said he'll look at, which doesn't make sense because he still lives with a boyfriend. So, like, I think he's full of it, but he tried saying it like one of the speeches he was doing that, like, if he gets erect, he takes candle wax, like really hot and there's candle wax out there that like gets really hot and stays really hot, but he drips that on himself. Yeah. I was like, oh, what?
He is crazy.
I think he's doing it because he enjoys it. I think he is a masochist and intentionally puts himself in positions where he is looked at as less. I really do, based on his history.
I mean, Catholicism, he's a Catholic, and like Catholicism has like, what is that thing? Your penance or whatever? I mean, maybe it's like kind of that idea, but he actually is kind of into it.
Right.
He wants to.
He claims he was.
He
in
grew
love
up
with
as like a pastor boy, a little whatever they are.
Yeah, and he hooked up with a priest.
So I wonder if that was a part of it, some kind of like ritual abuse.
I don't know.
Ritualistic abuse. Oh my gosh.
He got canceled after all that stuff. So.
Yeah, he did. So after she went to conversion therapy, she came out and decided she didn't want to be a counselor anymore. She wanted to be a nurse. So she went to nursing school and graduated and ended up going into caring for old people.
Okay.
Yeah. So then she gets married in 1997. If that's not
daddy issues, I don't know what it is.
Right.
Jeez.
So 1997, she gets married to a truck driver. His name is Donnie Wettlaufer. That's like where this last name comes from. And so he's a man, and she's not attracted to men. So throughout their marriage, and she just did it to satisfy her parents.
Sure. Yeah.
She apparently she wanted them to think the conversion therapy worked, but they never were convinced that it worked unless she got married. And she's like, well, I can get married and then they'll be convinced that it worked, and then like I'll be okay. And they never had kids. They never had children, thank God. And so while they're married, she starts having like issues with her mental health pretty severely. She starts
right away. You're forcing yourself to be with somebody that you don't
not attracted to or don't like at all. So she gets diagnosed with like bipolar, and I saw bipolar, and I also saw borderline. I don't know if those can coexist. Maybe they can. I don't really know. But I saw both of those brought up in her case. And so while they're married, she starts going online on like dating websites and talking to women.
Sure.
And a lot of them didn't amount to anything. Like, and apparently she was like, came on really strong. Like, she would talk to somebody for a few days and then be like, I'm in love with you. Like, profess her love to them. And they would be like, whoa.
Creep.
No.
Creepy.
Too far, okay? So a lot of them didn't work, but eventually she found someone she liked, and it did work. And her husband finds out and says she is sick and divorces her. His exact words, "You're sick." So clearly he wasn't very approving of her status either.
I mean, was he a religious background? Because
I didn't see anything about his background.
I'm assuming so.
I'm assuming he was. Or else her parents probably wouldn't have
What
approved.
year was this?
Well, they got married in 1997.
Okay, so this is relatively recent, at least within the last 30 years.
Yeah.
Got it.
So she divorces him and then moves in with her girlfriend, whose name is Sheila Andrews, who's a prison cafeteria worker.
Okay.
And so then they move in and they actually get married eventually. And she starts working in, it is Crescent Care. Okay. It's a nursing home of elderly people. And this is where, like, we first get into what she did.
Sure.
So she goes to work there, and I don't really understand. She basically says, like, the stress, which there's a long interrogation video of her talking to the police that she confessed to, going into, like, a lot of details, and she's just chopping it up with him. And he is too, back with her, which they're supposed to,
Yeah,
you know.
of course.
They're supposed to make him feel comfortable. But she's making jokes, and then, like, she's talking about, then, like, oh, I feel so bad for the families, like, they thought, you know, this, and, like, you know, like, she's acting like a normal human, like, oh, I just made a mistake.
Sociopath stuff.
It's really weird.
Yeah, that's the same thing we've seen with every serial killer, every one of them.
That's how
what
they
do.
talk
Yeah.
about it?
Yeah, that's how they handle the situation. No real emotions. They talk about emotions, but they don't actually have any emotions. So, yeah, normally they try to stay in a control power, like a control position, but once they realize they don't have any control, like they found out about all of it, then they're wide open about all the details, and they usually go way extreme to the other side and try to, like, overshare, you know, because they're in their head, they're proud of their work. So
she doesn't act proud of it, but she makes it sound like she's really remorseful, like she knows this is wrong. But anyway, so she goes in, she really wants to help people, okay? That's, like, what she says, is, like, she really wants to help these older people, and that was, like, her whole point of being a counselor, too. Like, that's what she felt like her mission in life was to help people. Mm-hmm. And she realizes taking care of these patients is really hard, because when old people are on their, like, last legs of life, you know, like, they're going downhill and they don't have all the mental faculties, they start becoming delusional and aggressive and scared, like paranoid, like lots of these, like, really hard, it's really hard to deal with someone who's in a state of delusion like that. They don't know what you're trying to do to them. They don't know who you are. They don't know if they can trust you. They're confused. They're out of it. And they really need people who are there to help them and understand that they can't help it.
Yep.
Like, they're dying. Like,
I would never do a job like that.
No.
So, like, anybody that does it and they take it serious, like, God, my hat's off to you, because I could not.
You have to be such a patient and strong person.
I am
to
patient.
be able to do that.
Not patient for an old person like that.
Yeah, and that's fine. And people should be able to say that and not go into that kind of care.
Yeah.
And then the people
Agreed.
who can do it, go into it, you know? Because there's amazing people who do these jobs. Like, I worked in a nursing home when I was 15 in the kitchen, and I met a lot of amazing nurses who were, like, incredible.
Yep.
And then I met some who were, like, stealing drugs off the cart, which is what she was doing. She got found out for ODing. She steals pain meds. She's a drug addict.
Oh, jeez.
So she's a drug addict, okay? She's got, like, borderline personality disorder already from what we see. And she's getting high at work, okay, which she claims she never did, but there's tons of accounts of coworkers saying that they'd find her passed out, like nodded out, in like a back room or something. And on top of it, she's the charge nurse. She's a charge nurse as head of all the nurses on the floor, okay?
What?
So she's a charge nurse, and when a patient dies, she's the one who marks if there's anything shady going on or not.
What?
So she takes advantage of her position, and while she's taking care of patients, if they become difficult, if she starts getting annoyed by them, like, oh, they don't want to let me give them this medicine, you know what I mean? Like something like that, she'll feel like she claimed it was like this thing from God, like, oh, they're the next one. They're the one that needs to die. Or, oh, they want to die. Look at them. They want to die. Like some of them she acts like it was like sympathy. And some of them it was like they're a bad person and God wants me to kill them. And it sounds like she was taking out like her stress of life.
Well, of course.
And
projecting it onto them, and yeah.
Yeah. So this is how she would kill them. She would inject them with a fatal dose of insulin.
Oh, man.
So her victims ranged in age from 75 to 96, and their loved ones...
How many?
There's 8.
Jeez.
That actually died. There's more than that. But the ones that actually died from that are 8 that she was charged and convicted with. So their names are James Silcox, 84, Maurice Granite, 84, Gladys Millard, 87, Heather Matheson, 95, Mary Zurowinski, which is 96, Helen Young, 90, and Maureen Pickering, 79, Arpid Horvath, 75. And every single one of their family members, like all of them, their family members believe they died of natural causes.
Sure.
And
why would they have any reason to doubt that when, the charge nurse is saying everything looks good? They're older, already in an elderly home, like...
All of them were on their way out, pretty much.
That's why they believe there's a ton of these nurses out there doing these things. It's because it's so hard to catch them.
It is hard to catch them. And I feel like I saw something like this happen before, actually. And it wasn't when I worked in the nursing home. It was actually with a boyfriend I had when I was younger. And his grandmother was in the nursing home. And I walked in there to meet her for the first time. She was like, they're trying to kill me. And she was up talking normal. Then, like, literally the next day out of it. And then dead the next day. And his mom told me that she thought they OD'd her on Xanax and, like, opioids. Because her doses seemed like they were way too high.
And then they should have got an autopsy and had them check the blood levels.
Yeah, they should have. Because, but they were not... that family themselves were, like, not great people. So, like, maybe they... I don't know. Maybe they didn't want that to happen because of some other reason, like insurance or something, if they're investigating a death. I don't know. Huh. But anyway, so I know her very first victim was, because she had 2 attempts, okay? There was like an older lady, one of the older ladies here was the first one, and I heard it described, which I'm trying to remember the word she used to describe it, but like, a lot of these people she really liked at first. Like, she was okay with them. And then something would just like kind of set her off because they were becoming difficult. And then like she started having this feeling like it was their time to go and God was telling her. And then she would take the insulin, she would inject them with it, and she said she would get this relief and like she would laugh. Every time. Like, she would get this, like, release and laugh. As, like, right after she injected them. And it wasn't...
That's psychotic.
It is. And it's not an instant death. This is a slow, painful death. They go into hyperglycemia and feel awful. They get shakes, like they start feeling terrible, okay? And if it's enough insulin, they go into a coma.
Yeah.
And die. Like, it's slow, and some of them didn't die. Her first 2 victims didn't die. They had to go through all of this and didn't die at the end. Like, they just were, like, on death's door for a few days. Jeez. Or, like, a week. And there were a few nurses who saw, like, something's up, you know, and they would kind of say something, but she was the charge nurse, and it never went anywhere. And get this, she went to a pastor at a local church and told him that she had been killing people in the nursing home. And when the police questioned him about it, they're like, why didn't you tell anybody?
Yeah.
Like, she confessed to you and you just didn't tell anyone? And he's like, well, the way she was talking about it, like, he's like, I got this vibe from her. Like, her personality to me seemed like she really wanted attention and would make things up just to get attention. And so we just, like, kind of were like, you know, God forgives you. He's like, I really didn't believe her. Well, apparently she went to a lawyer and confessed to him. And he said, shut your mouth. Don't tell anybody. Keep it to yourself. That's, you know, don't tell anyone.
Yeah.
And apparently I think the lawyer said they didn't believe her either. And she also, okay, went to rehab, and this is eventually how she got caught, okay?
Rehab for the drugs?
For the drugs. She went to rehab and started getting help, and she confessed in rehab, which I think I also read that they didn't believe her. But an investigation ended up coming out of this, and then she went in and confessed to the cops, and they had some evidence finally, and she literally just sat in the interrogation room and just told them everything. And she had been working with a therapist and said that the therapist made her realize this wasn't really God. And what made her change her mind about all this and stop killing was she got a different job because she lost I keep wanting to say convalescent.
The charge nurse.
That position in Carescent care. She ended up leaving that to go to rehab, okay?
Okay.
Because she got caught stealing drugs. And then she got another job, and her wife divorced and left each other. And then she got a new job, and her life is in shambles pretty much. Like, she's having a lot of problems. I think this is like around the time where she killed several victims. And then her job wanted her to work with kids, like terminally ill kids. And she was like, she said at first she was going to do it, okay? But then she was like, I can't trust myself once I start feeling like that. So she was like, that's where the line is drawn. I can't do it to kids.
Oh my gosh.
Because she thought, oh, I might actually kill kids. So then she actually starts trying to get help. And a psychologist, I guess, gets through to her that this is not God telling you this. You are delusional and crazy. And the police investigation, she just literally spills it all. And talks about the therapist.
Crazy.
It's so crazy. But
why didn't the therapist say something?
I don't know. I mean,
all of those people that she told have the right to tell the police.
Every single person, but it seems like a lot of people just didn't believe her. Like,
because she was probably already seemingly crazy.
Mm-hmm. So it was the addiction center that informed the College of Nurses, not even the police. They told the College of Nurses, and then the College of Nurses told the police, and then an investigation went on. So this freaks me out just because it scares me to be in a nursing home. Like, it scares me to even be in a hospital sometimes because the nurses really do have so much control.
They're one of
Especially
the
if it's a
three
head
red
nurse.
flag positions. I'm telling you, the three positions are priests, dentists, and nurses.
Yep. So
I
they
will never trust any of those, ever.
So there was an inquiry done after because they're like, oh my gosh, we would have never caught her. If she didn't confess, like, there's no way we would have caught her. So they started doing, it says, Commissioner Eileen Gillis wrote that they wouldn't have caught her because she injected them with insulin, which specifically is, like, super hard to find out. Like, that's how they died, that it was insulin and not something else. And it talks about 91 recommendations to help prevent this in the future.
Jeez.